Good evening. What it was like, what happened, and what it's like now with a lot of gratitude. You know, for me, I think gratitude is the biggest thing in my life at pretty much every day, even when life happens. You know, so I just keep notes so I remember where I'm at on my timelines. But, you know, I think about, you know, when I go way back, and I hadn't done that until I was writing out my timeline here. I haven't done that in a long time, gone back to, you know, when I was born. And I won't start you there because, well, obviously I wasn't drinking yet. Although I was in Vegas before I was born. And I've never been there after. But when I think about that, I go back to school, and I was kind of a crazy kid, I guess. I mean, I got kicked out of preschool, and I got kicked out of a lot of schools. And it was when I started learning to be manipulative, really, because in preschool I learned that if I peed my pants and hid under the table, my mom would come and get me. So what did I do every day in preschool? I would pee my pants and hide under the table, and I would get to go home. So eventually I wasn't allowed back. You know, and then I get to school, and, you know, where you can't pee your pants and hide under the table anymore. You know, in kindergarten, you want to feel like a big kid, I guess. And, you know, I get into trouble here and there until about, you know, 7th grade. When I finally got kicked out of school, I got in trouble for something I didn't do. And today I know why. I didn't for a long time. And so it goes back to a different teacher who I threw a garbage can at. And the next day I'm walking down the hall, and there's a kid walking the opposite way. I'm initially from the Chicago area. And this kid's walking the opposite way wearing a Bulls shirt. And I look at him and I go, that's a lot of bull shirt. And this teacher grabs my arm and drags me to the principal's office for saying bullshit, and they were going to give me an in-school suspension for saying that. And I tipped over the principal's desk. So I had a lot of anger in me. And this eventually led to drinking to try to stay out of trouble, you know, for the most part, or learn how to understand and how to get through life. And I eventually got kicked out of a couple other schools for beating up teachers and various things until they sent me to a school where you had to write with crayons, and I couldn't take it. It was way too much ridiculousness for me. Even though I put myself there, I didn't see it that way. You know, I try to put myself in the mind of where I was at the moment in the story. And so I quit and got in a big fight with my parents when I quit school, and they're like, well, if you're not going to go to school, you have to go to work. So I got my first job, you know, and it was a Jiffy Lube. Wasn't a great job, but, you know, $5.25 an hour back then, and that one, there was a store that had commissions, so I could be shady and make a little bit extra money. And I was there for a little less than 2 weeks when I got in trouble for drinking at work. And the boss is talking to me. He goes, you know, I found a bottle of Jack Daniels here, and nobody else claimed it, and I got to ask you, even though you're the new kid. And I was like, yeah, that's mine. You know, and he goes, well, why are you drinking at work? I go, because you told me I had to talk to people. You know, and that's, you know, that was my thing. And then, you know, fast forward a little bit in the same job to the Christmas party, and what did I get for Christmas? A bag of weed and a bottle of Jack Daniels, because that's what he knew that I liked. The only rule at that store was I wasn't allowed to drink the boss's last beer, because we had a fridge full of beer in the basement. So that didn't last long. You know, I got fired from a lot of jobs, and I was good at every one of them, to the point where my second job was at Toys R Us. I worked there 4 times. I got fired twice and I quit twice. And, you know, I got in trouble for drinking there a couple times. I got in trouble. I smoked a joint by myself in the upstairs storeroom. Yeah. Yeah. And so I was walking down the stairs. I see a boss walking up the stairs, and I'm like, oh, shit. All right. So this continued for a long time, and I got in trouble for that, of course. And then I got into landscaping, because doing that, I could drink at work and nobody would say a thing. I'm outside, I'm doing my thing, right? Well, then I still got in trouble for drinking at work. And I ended up, sometimes I would, leave a note at the job site and just leave. If you need me, I'll be at. And I'd tell them what bar I was at. And they'd call, and hey, are you coming back? I don't know, maybe tomorrow. I never knew. I never knew what I was going to do. And, when I get to my 20s, that's when I went through the phase of, I call it the sleeping in yards phase. Because there was, a long period where every day I would go to Dominic's and buy a bottle of Gordon's citrus vodka, and then I would go to DeCarlo's and buy a case of Hams, because Hams was the cheapest beer I could get, and it tasted like shit too. But, and that was my daily routine, and I would just, drink all day, and when it got dark, I'd go for a walk, and I'd wake up somewhere, and then I'd have to go for another walk to find a street sign to see where I was, so that I could figure out how to get home. And I kind of skipped a section here. I skipped the summer of '96, and I write that note because that was, to me, when my drinking, actually alcoholic style type drinking, started in the summer of '96. And that was every morning I would wake up and I would listen to either Jethro Tull or an Eagles record, and friends would come over, and we would start drinking, and I'd cook breakfast, and then we'd go out about our day. Usually we'd just spend the whole day breaking stuff. That was our thing. We'd ride our bikes around town and just break whatever we could, smash stuff, break things, harass other kids and people, whatever. And, that actually increased till when we had cars, and we'd just be able to drive around and do the mailboxes and windows and windshield, whatever we wanted to break. And there was one incident that I wanted to mention from there, because I didn't realize it until years later what it actually meant. We stole there was an intersection where this pickup truck with 4 Mexicans in it was hit by a garbage truck and were killed. And they had these crosses on the road there, and we stole a couple of them, and we were driving around with them, and a friend and me grabbed one. We're at this church, and we ran with this, and this is a 4x4, at this church window. The cross broke. I can't explain it, right? And so, there was a message there. I just wasn't listening. And this whole time period, there's lessons, and I'm not listening. So eventually, to stay out of trouble at work and not get fired from jobs, I decided to incorporate and have my own landscape company so nobody can say anything. And that worked well for a little while. I got a girlfriend that I knew I wouldn't have had without a certain status, so I had business cards printed. They said president and all this stuff, so I could get this girl to like me, and it worked. And she drank like I drank. It was amazingly horrible, right? Because now, what do I have? I have a landscape company that's about to fail because I'm spending my time doing this. I have somebody who drinks like I do, so now I can really do whatever I want. And we would fight over who pissed the bed. It was a fun time. She was smart. She left me. She got married, and she's happy now. I still talk to her though. We're friends, and that's the weird thing, is that so many of these people from the past I'm friends with still, or again, sometimes again, usually again, right? because that stuff happens when we start to change our lives. So, I did eventually screw up that landscape company, of course, and I tried to hang on to it, but I couldn't because all I did was drink. By the end of that, I was working about half a day a week. I would do my mowing route and nothing else, and a part of that was because I traded my truck for a Corvette, so I couldn't even, how do you landscape out of a Corvette, right? I would trade cars with my dad on, my mowing day, so I could use his car to tow my mower around and do some lawns, but I couldn't sell any other jobs unless they were really small, because then I could put shovels in the Corvette. It was a convertible, so I put the top down and drive around with shovels and rakes, and it didn't look professional. But I was trying, sort of. And so, I get to the point where, one of two important dates in my sobriety. One is my sobriety date, which I forgot to mention, is October 6th of 2019. The other date is the day of my first meeting, when I was introduced to this program. And that's where my story, I think, really starts to come together. I woke up, it was about 4:30 in the morning, and I was covered in piss and puke and sweat, and I almost said and shit, but I didn't shit on myself. I said that once, and then somebody asked me after the meeting, they're like, you didn't tell me you shit on yourself. I'm like, okay, sorry, I didn't. But, that's why I'm careful with that statement now. But, I prayed that morning. I said, God, I don't want to live this way anymore. Please help me. I don't think I ever prayed for any kind of help in my life prior to that, other than selfish things like, God, make that cop turn, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it might have worked. I don't know. I got out of a lot of trouble. But, when I think about that, it was 6:30 that morning meeting. I was in a meeting. I don't remember looking it up. I don't remember finding it, but I remember walking in the doors, and I opened the first set of doors, and I heard laughter. So I walked back out, looked up at the sign, make sure I'm in the right building, and I go in, and, I had that look that newcomers have every single time they told me. They say I looked like shit. But, they're like, am I in the right place? Yeah, please have a seat, pretty much, right? And, I did. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm all confused because I'm looking in this building, and this was an old bank, and they have, the, what do you call it? That room where they put the money. Vault. Yeah, thanks. I don't know. So I'm looking at the vault, and the door's behind a wall, but the cage is there. So I'm like, is they got a little jail cell in here for when people fuck up? That's what I was thinking. And then they took me in this room upstairs for a first step meeting. And, a few guys told me a little bit of their story, and they gave me a chance to talk. And so I did, and I started going to a bunch of meetings because they suggested I do 90 meetings in 90 days. I can beat that. I did 107 meetings in 30 days. All I did for that 30 days was go to the club. There was 37 meetings a week there, but there was another club down the road 4 miles away that had a lot of meetings too. And so sometimes I could do one, I'd go to the 1:30, and then I could go to the 3 o'clock at the other club and then be back to this one for the 5. And I did that every single day, without a sponsor, without anything. So of course I drank again. And because that Christmas after that, and I was actually thinking about it on the way here, because I tell the cake pan story every year around this time of year. And it was my first Christmas without a drink. I don't know how I did. I do now, but I was thinking about it on the way here, why it worked out that way. And I know the answer. It came to me. But I hadn't talked to my dad in a long time. I was in Majestic Star Casino in Gary, Indiana, and I saw him sitting at the bar. And I was like, well, I got to talk to him. So I go and sit down at the bar. And the bartender comes up. Can I get you something to drink? No, thanks. Okay. And there's this bottle of Glenlivet with the light shining on it, and it's glowing at me, and I'm smoking a cigar, and I'm looking at that bottle of scotch, and I'm like, oh my God, how do people do this? I'm questioning the whole point of life at this point. And I put a $100 bill in this video slot, and I'm playing it, and all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I look up, and this woman says, "Hi, I'm the marketing manager here at the casino, and because you're playing this machine at this moment, you just won $500 in free slot play and a cake pan." And she handed me a cake pan. I haven't baked a cake with it yet. I learned I need 2 cake pans to bake a cake. But it was that miracle that I needed, because I needed a distraction right at that moment. And I didn't know what to do. So I was trying, and because I was trying, that's why the miracle was able to be there. And I learned that because I didn't realize, at that moment I decided I could just depend on these miracles to happen, and I wouldn't have to actually do any work. I could just, hey, I'll just depend on this. And it did not work out that way at all. In fact, it got worse, a lot worse. And it got to the point where I realized I could go without drinking, and I thought I was doing really well because I wasn't doing any steps or anything, but I had a kind of a crummy sponsor that, I didn't have to talk to or anything, and, he kind of half-assed everything, so I'm like, this is perfect, right? And I realized that I don't remember how much money, but it was a lot. It was all my money, basically. In a few months, I spent Asian massage parlors. And, it was at the point where I would get there, and the mama sign would say, "Oh, no, you come back tomorrow. You here yesterday. New girl tomorrow. You try first." Okay. And so I'd have to go to a different massage parlor because they wouldn't let me in that one. And that's how bad it was, but I didn't even see it. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing because I wasn't drinking. And then that, leads to the story of my last drunk that I'm, eternally grateful for, even though it kind of sucked. Because it started with a tooth. There was this weird girl that I was trying a 13th step because I was out of money, so I couldn't go to massage parlors anymore. And I was being really ridiculous. Anyway, she called me and asked me for a pair of pliers. And I was like, okay. So I stopped at her work. I gave her a pair of pliers. I didn't even question it. Later, we're at a speaker meeting, and after the meeting, a bunch of people go out to eat there. And she passed me a little baggie with a tooth in it across the table. And so I'm holding this back. I'm like, okay, I didn't know what to do. Everybody's looking. I see people looking from down the table. I just put it in my pocket. I didn't know what to do with this tooth at this point. I was kind of caught off guard. I didn't, I've never had that experience before. So, I at a meeting and people are talking, and I hear people talking. I find out that this one guy who has one eye and wears slippers, he's really weird. Nice guy, though. Told everybody that she passed me a crack rock across the table. And I'm trying to explain that, no, it was a tooth. And nobody would believe the story. So, I'm kind of mad at this girl about this. And I'm also more mad because, and I don't usually tell this part of the story, but it's important because it makes everything come together for me. She's the only girl that had ever ridden on my motorcycle that didn't give me a blowjob. And I had the biggest resentment in the world over this because I wasn't working the steps. And obviously I wouldn't have been in that situation if I were. But, so I end up going out and drinking. But before I did, I went to my home group meeting on a Monday night, big book study, and left right before the meeting. And I'm sitting on a bar stool, and I get a call. Hey, we saw your car at the meeting. Oh, yeah, I'm busy. Well, I wanted to talk to you about something. Okay, I'll come by after the meeting. So I come by after the meeting, and I tell off every single person in that room. I called out for shit individually because, they're all stupid for being there. I have the answers, right? Because I'm drunk. And, I couldn't even get back to the club from the bar without stopping at a 7-Eleven. But that was on Monday. And I don't really remember much of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or I remember part of Saturday because that's when it kind of came to its thing. I remember I was in this bar with they serve warm beer and it doesn't taste right and it smells real bad in there. And I didn't realize that one of the guys from that club, his mom lived next door to that bar. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I look back, and there's these two guys. Get the fuck out of here! Well, they told the bar, about me, and so they tried to keep me from leaving. And so I'd go out to smoke. Guys would come out and smoke with me, and I'm trying to get out of there because I don't want to. I'm running out of money at the bar, and so I had to run off and hide, and then get my car and drive home, and then somewhere between then and in the evening somewhere, I know I was walking through a park and I was approached by some cops and I had my bag of wine and, I ended up, somehow I was negotiating with the cops to let me finish my drink. And a few days later, and I don't know what day it was, I woke up in a hospital bed. And, they were like, would you like to go for a walk? I'm like, sure, and then they bring me this walker. And I'm like, what? I don't need a walker. And they're like, yes, you do. I'm like, no. And they're like, you can't walk without it. I'm like, well, I sure can. And I did, and they were mad. And they said I was a fall risk because of the amount of alcohol I had in me. It wasn't even that much. I don't know what it was. It didn't feel like much, I should say. Apparently it was, because I had the yellow socks. But then I ended up in the psych ward there, and they wouldn't let me in the regular people section. It had to be so in this particular hospital, you got the crazy people room, psych ward. And then in the very back corner, there's another set of doors for the extra crazy people. So I was in there. And I stole one of those bendy pens, because you weren't even allowed to keep those in that section. And I journaled. And it was ridiculous what I wrote in there. When I read it now, I look at that, I'm like, holy shit. It wasn't even the same person. And so my mom comes to visit me, and I tell her about the tooth. And sorry, that's a hard part for me. And I remember this girl was into some weird shit, and she had this picture on her coffee table, and there was like some lungs circled on it. It was an anatomy thing. And so I put it together that I was going to get cancer from this tooth. And I told my mom, I said, I'm here because of this tooth, because that's what's in my journal. And I need to get rid of this tooth. And she goes, well, I'll get rid of that for you. I'm like, no, because somebody's going to get cancer. And she's like, well, then I'll get cancer. You don't have to. And so she destroyed that tooth for me. And next day, they let me go. They realized I wasn't crazy. They didn't read my journal, obviously. But, they realized, they were like, why? Because I was talking to a nurse, and she goes, why are you over here and not in the regular crazy people or whatever they called it section? And I was like, I don't know. I still don't know why. And so, I leave there, and I finally think I have a bottom I can live with. I go to the Saturday night speaker meeting there, and I'm early, so I figure I'll go to the Oktoberfest. I walk in there because I was going to eat bratwurst and watch the German polka band. So I'm watching the band, everything's fine, and this guy leaving hands me 2 beer tickets. He says, I'm getting out of here, I have these, take these. So next thing you know, I got a beer in my hand. Obviously, I got beer tickets, I'm going to get a beer. And I drank about half of it. And this voice hit me. I said, Mark, what the fuck are you doing? And it was at that moment when that willingness finally came in, because I saw the insanity. And, you know, I had basically 2 years of watching people improve their lives in these rooms without actually seeing the insanity in myself. And I'm grateful for it today, but in that moment, that was pretty painful. So, I go into the meeting, I call my sponsor right away, I walk out, I handed the other beer ticket to some random guy. Hopefully he wasn't there for what I was there for. But anyway, so I walk out, I call my sponsor, he's like, well, just go to the meeting. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do that. So I did that, right? And that's when I decided to finally, get some of that willingness. And then that Monday night big book meeting I had to go back to, and that took some humility for me, I think, to walk in there after the things that I said to all those guys. I mean, I did it anyway because I had to, because now my life depends on it, where before I just didn't care. And wouldn't you know, I walk in there and every single one of those guys came up and hugged me and we're so glad you're here. None of what I was afraid of actually happened. I didn't have to fight any of those guys. Nothing bad happened. They weren't even mad at me. They knew, because that's what we do. We know because we've all been there. We've all thought the same ridiculous lines of thought. Even if our stories are a little bit different, the thinking is the same. And then weird things started to happen. Like, I was at a gas station and I'm putting gas in this truck because, so I have the Corvette and it's winter and I can't get around. But I get a call from a guy that I worked for in the past, and he says, hey, Mark, I need somebody to help me out snowplowing this winter. And I was like, well, okay, but I have a Corvette, so I can't get there on snow days. And he goes, oh, well, I'll just give you a truck and a credit card, and you can use the truck for whatever you need all winter long, and you don't have to buy any gas or anything for it. And if you want to fix anything on the truck, just do it and bill me for it. Okay. So I'm putting gas in this truck on my way to a meeting, and I see this girl whose car didn't start. I look over and I think to myself, I'm going to help her out, if there's jumper cables in the truck. And I did. And they're behind the seat. I could start her car because her battery was dead. It was like 8 degrees. And I finished fueling up the truck. I look at her and she looks like a bitch. So I got in the truck and I left. I get to the meeting 45 minutes early, and the doors are on a timer that unlock a half an hour before the meeting. So now I really feel kind of crummy. And so I call the sponsor and I tell him what I did, and he just starts laughing at me. And I go, well, I don't see why this is funny. And he goes, well, because you're starting to recognize these things. He says, how many times have you done this kind of stuff in the past and not even noticed? Right? And so, I get through, this ice cream store that I really, really like, and I'd get ice creams with a hair in it, and I'd just because this woman would bend down to scoop the ice cream, and her hair would be all in the ice cream. But it was so good. And I was grateful for it because I don't really know why exactly. I like the ice cream. But I wasn't going to complain. I was trying to practice these principles and not be an asshole about a hair and ice cream. And by February of 2020, my mom is diagnosed with small cell lung cancer. And, so I really want to beat myself up over it because of the tooth thing. And I got this going on. And that was a story that I left off my original 4th step because 2 reasons. One, it just sounds ridiculous and insane, and so deep down I know the insanity of it, so I didn't want to say it out loud. But, the other is if I accept the ridiculousness of it, then by doing that, then I'm going to feel pretty guilty. Right? So there's kind of a weird thing there. And so, I go through a bunch of other unhealthy relationships and all this stuff. But, December 6th of 2020 is when I lost my mom, and that was right after I moved to Missouri. I came down here with them because a couple of reasons. One is they wanted to retire down here. The other is my mom had cancer, and the third was I already fucked up my life enough. there's nothing up there. I wanted to get out of there anyway, and I had a good reason. And I couldn't even live because I had nothing. I spent all my money on the Asians. But, you know, when I lost my mom on December 6th of 2020, I remember sitting in the hospital. And so this is during COVID. Everybody's got masks, you know, and it was a really shitty time. And I remember for a moment I was sitting there smiling. And I was so grateful for the masks at that moment. And, you know, I wasn't smiling and I wasn't happy about losing my mom, obviously. I was kind of a mama's boy. When I was a kid, I asked for a vacuum for Christmas one year. But, you know, I was happy that she got to see me start to change my life and to get sober. So, you know, that was what I was grateful for in that moment. So even with this whole tooth thing and like, thinking this weird shit, I was still grateful for that, right? Because I got to give her probably one of the best gifts a kid could give a parent. So, you know, get through that. Next thing you know, I'm, you know, kind of stressed about this other stuff, trying to ignore everything. So I didn't go to any Asian massage parlors because I couldn't afford them, but I found some pretty unhealthy relationships for the wrong reasons. Not drugs or anything, just women that I knew I could manipulate and get whatever I want from, is what it was, and who would buy me things. And, you know, when I made a rule, if she wanted to date me, she had to bake me a cake every month. And I got a cake a month from this girl until I finally cheated on her, you know. And, you know, it was ridiculous, really ridiculous stuff, not something sane people would do. You know, and so I'm like, well, maybe I'll try to get another job. And I was screwing up jobs, you know, and I don't know why, too, because I'm really sensitive to, you know, rejection and stuff. And whether if it's real or perceived, it doesn't matter. It feels the same. And being really sensitive to it, any criticism sometimes I'll take way too harshly. And, you know, that's kind of one of my defects that I have to work on. But somehow through all this stuff, I never even thought about taking a drink or had any desire to drink. You know, and that lack of desire to drink is a miracle in itself. You know, so I decided, you know, maybe it's time to go through these steps again and clear up some of this stuff and, you know, that I've been kind of hanging on to and I didn't do any 10-step stuff with, but because I was smaller. And so, you know, I'm stressed about writing out a 4-step for a little while, and I'm like, well, just do it so she gets better. So I start doing that, and then all of a sudden, I get gratitude again. And I did not expect it, because the first time I did a 4-step, there was no gratitude at that moment. I was stressed. I was miserable. I mean, right? I'm looking over at all the stuff that I did. Of course I was miserable. But I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm like, you know what? This is nowhere near as bad as it used to be. So I saw growth in that at that time. So even when I'm, you know, trying to work on stuff, there's still growth. And I need to always remember that, you know, when I'm beating myself up about stuff, to recognize that the growth that's in it, you know, and I look forward to that continued growth, because if everything were really easy, I would have had no desire to change. I've never changed anything in my entire life because it was easy. You know, if I'm skating and everything's simple, what am I going to do? I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because, you know, right? Because it feels good. And that's the thing. It doesn't even matter what feels good, because, you know, most of my life was spent, you know, basically chasing pleasure, looking for happiness. And there was no happiness in any of it. It was all just moments of what I was hoping would become happiness, but it was never there. You know, and, you know, I'd try to make money when I needed it, and, you know, I'm just chasing money, but there's no wealth. Now in AA, I have less money than I've ever had in my entire life, yet I feel so much more wealthy than I've ever felt in my entire life. Every need I've ever had has always been met. So why should I stress about needs not being met if it's never, ever happened in my entire life, right? You know, and that's the thing, you know, the things that I worry about are usually really, really dumb, or they're things I don't have control over anyway, so what's the point? You know? And so I look forward to these new challenges because they become, as we grow, for me, as I grow, I get new tools and experience. The tools that we get in this program between the steps and the phone and, oh my God, was that thing heavy at the beginning, but all this stuff, as we develop these tools and experience, new challenges pop up, so we get to use them. Because if we didn't use them and we didn't grow, then we wouldn't get the next step and the next assortment of challenges to get even more tools and to make them even better. And I kind of think of it as learning how to be a person is what I'm in the middle of right now. And sobriety, I'm more of a person than I was, but I spent my whole life not even knowing what I was doing, not caring what I was doing. I only cared about, trying to get through life, not trying to understand life, not trying to, do the right thing, not caring about other people at all. It was all selfish. So I surprise myself constantly. And, it's always one day at a time, and I can start that day at any time, but it's weird how when I came in here and people would say that, and it was really a struggle then, that one day at a time, and then all of a sudden I look back and I go, where did all these days come from? What happened? Like 1,000-something days? I'm like, how? It was hard, and then it wasn't. Then life is hard, but that's because it's life. It's going to be either way, but I'm not, making it worse. When I have to deal with something or life happens, I'm not out there, well, let's see if I could hide from this for a long time and get drunk and cause more problems in the process while I'm hiding from the little problem, and now all of a sudden I got big problems and little problems. And that doesn't happen anymore, And so it's so much better. It's the humility, the ability, to love humanity, and to be at peace. I'm going to fast forward the story to yesterday because we're getting close to time, but also because, it was a moment that I had. I left the Forsyth meeting last night on my way home, and I've been feeding my dad. He's got a cold, so I've been feeding him turkey soup every night because it's after Thanksgiving. I got a lot of that. Why make chicken soup if I got all this turkey? And so I'm like, he probably wants to eat something different, and I do, because I'm tired of turkey. And I had enough points on the app to get, a couple pizzas from Casey's, so I do that, and I stop there. And I walk in the store, and I see the woman, cleaning and running around, and then the woman in the kitchen area is, back making all kinds of noises with the dishes, and I said, I'm going to wait for her to come out. I'm not going to bother this one. I'm going to see how long it takes because, in my mind, I'm still an alcoholic. I wanted to, be like, hey, I've been waiting for, right? So I was waiting for her to peek out or something. She never did. I said, after 6 minutes, I'm going to say something to the other girl and complain. All of a sudden, this woman comes up to me and she goes, are you being helped? I said, no. She goes, how long have you been waiting? And I go, I don't know. I did know because I was watching, but I didn't tell her. It was 7 minutes. I had no idea. I thought it was like 3 or 4, but I was just standing there in this meditative state, relaxed, and this woman's like, you could have said something to me, and I go, I thought about it, but I was just really relaxed, and I'm okay. And she looked at me like I was kind of crazy. But I'm used to that. I get that a lot, And that's the thing, though. It's okay to be crazy when I'm being crazy in a useful, helpful, loving manner. The crazy that I was before, when you escape from a hospital and you're running down a street in a hospital gown and the cops run up and, hey, we're here to help you. We don't want to hurt you. You fucked up. But the crazy of I'm really at peace and relaxed, that kind of crazy, I want more of that. And the only place I've ever found that was in AA. And, you know, I think about AA as a place that I came to learn how to not drink, and became a place where I learned to understand my higher power a little bit. And that, you know, people talk about that all the time, how to find a higher power, how to find God, this and that. And when I was new, I didn't want to hear any of it. I think that's pretty common. But, you know, I didn't want to hear any of that. But somehow, you know, that miracle, like the cake pan, and hundreds of other stories similar to that, like, you know, the one where I tried to go to a bar because I was angry after our meeting and the doors were locked and the lights were off on a Saturday night. And then my phone rang and I answered it, and it was somebody from AA needing help. And I sat on the phone and talked to this guy for 2 hours, and then all of a sudden that whole desire to drink went away. You know, all these things, you know, all these miracles, that gave me kind of my little first in with God, to have a little bit of trust. And then over time, you know, through prayer and meditation, you know, and I want to concentrate on meditation for a second, because, you know, it changes over time, and I've been doing different meditations and things. But I had to start with a meditative hobby, worked for me best. And what I mean is, I was standing at my lathe, I was making a pen. And for the first time in my entire life, I had that peace that, you know, newcomers probably don't know, but old timers do, or long timers, or whatever I'm supposed to say. You know, and I still carry that pen with me every single day, because that's my reminder. It's in my pocket. But I hope it's in there. Otherwise, I just lied. That's there. Anyway, you know, and so I started with that, and then I get into these other meditations, and all of a sudden I start getting some answers, because I stopped asking God to make that cop turn, although sometimes I still do, because I don't want to get a ticket. But, you know, the consequences are much smaller now. You know, my prayers now are more along I'm not even asking for things for other people, really, or anything. It's more along the lines of asking questions like, what should I do? What's my part in this? That kind of stuff. You know, and it's way different, because then I actually get answers in meditation sometimes for that. Or if not, those answers sometimes come in life and how things unfold. You know, it's like, I hate to say this, but George is going to like it. It's like getting a new pair of glasses is what it is, you know, because he's a Chuck C fan, and me too. And, you know, and I put that on my notes too. I just drew a pair of glasses to remember. But, you know, and that's it. You know, my main focus is on gratitude, recovery, growth, love, God, inspiration, and trying to be the best that I can be, which is far from perfect. And that's why I'm so grateful that this says, you know, we're not perfect. You know, if it said we were perfect, I would not be here. I don't do meetings with people that are perfect. I did one once. I was telling somebody about it outside, you know. I got in trouble because I was sitting on the wrong side of the room, because I was the first one there, and I sat down, I'm staring at my phone, and I get a tap on my shoulder. I'm sorry, sir. Usually men sit on that side of the room, women on this side. And I look around, I'm surrounded by women. Okay, I'll move. I go to the other side. Same guy comes back a few minutes later. Sir, we can't wear hats in here. And then I look around. I'm the only person not wearing a tie in this. And I never went back there. But, you know, and now here I am wearing a tie because I said I would. But, you know, I just gratitude. You know, if I could end on any one word, it's going to be gratitude. And I have a list of words here I thought about too. Prayer, meditation, steps, fellowship, service, the phone, even when it's 500 pounds, going to meetings, events, you know, I can't read my writing, you know, loving, kindness, compassion, caring, grateful, accepting, all these things that are important. Gratitude. If I have to end on one word, that's it. And I want to thank you guys for asking me to be here, because I love every single one of you, and there's nothing a single one of you can do about it.